have too much camera gear, then this video is for you. Because although having a lot of camera gear can be nice, sometimes too much of it can be a bad thing. But what exactly do I mean by that? You see, having too much camera gear can present a couple problems as a photographer. Like focusing too much on the camera gear over actually taking photos. Look, I love camera gear too, and really enjoy it when I get a new piece of gear. But if you think that getting new camera gear will make you better as a photographer, well, that's just a false way of thinking about it. Just because you get a new piece of gear doesn't mean your work will improve. Because the only way you improve is if you focus on going out and shooting and getting lots of reps in to build your portfolio of work. Hyperfixating on camera gear deviates your energy from going out to shoot, and instead keeps you glued to a computer screen looking for that new piece of gear. However, I will say, sometimes getting that new piece of gear can make a big difference in your work. For example, if you're new to landscape photography and shooting handheld, getting a tripod and ND filters allows you to capture long exposures, a technique that you can only do with a tripod and filters, which gives you creative control that you didn't have before. But to me, there's a major difference between getting pieces of camera gear to fulfill your needs as a photographer and being excessive. And majority of the time, if you've been in photography long enough and have a massive collection of lenses and camera bodies and want a shiny new toy, chances are you don't really need the new camera, but it's more of a want. Trust me, I would know this because I used to be like that. Plus, having too much camera gear takes up too much space that could be used for other things. And having more gear than you need can also lock up money in camera gear versus using it to go out and shoot more. Instead of holding on to that couple $1,000 lens that collects dust, you could sell it and use that to go on a landscape trip to somewhere that you've never experienced before, like a national park or to another country with beautiful terrains. Okay, wait a second, but we're talking a lot about the issue of having too much camera gear, so how do you know when you've reached that point? One great way to know is that if you have pieces of gear that overlap with each other and serve a lot of the same purposes. At one point, I had 3 wide-angle lenses that all had very similar purposes. I had a 12-28 DX f3.5 to 5.6 as a wide-angle lens for my Z30, my 14-30mm f4S, which was my main wide-angle lens for my full frame camera, and finally a 17-28mm f2.8, which served as a fast wide-angle zoom. Having 3 wide-angle lenses with practically the same focal length didn't make sense for me to keep, as they all were meant to capture both landscapes and video. I originally got them because I thought that they would each kind of serve different niche purposes within my kit. Like the 17-28mm being a stop faster than the 14-30 meant I'd have better low light performance and a shallower depth of field, but ended up feeling like it wasn't enough of an advantage to keep the 17-28. Of course, having f2.8 is better than having f4 in certain scenarios, but it simply wasn't necessary, and found myself picking one over the other when I only needed one of the lenses. And I'm sure in your kit there are probably lenses and bodies that kind of serve a lot of the same purposes, so it makes sense to downsize that and get rid of the pieces of gear that overlap with each other. Another great way to know if you have too much gear is if you have pieces of gear they are originally intended to serve one purpose, but you stopped using it because you stopped shooting for that particular reason. Like if you shot a lot of sports photography and had a 200-500 lens, then realized that sports wasn't your jam, then getting rid of that 200-500 makes too much sense. Wow, that kind of sounds a lot like me. Wait, this is about me. If you have pieces of gear that don't serve its intended purpose anymore because you don't shoot that same niche, then it doesn't make sense to continue keeping it. One great rule of thumb that I have is that if you have a piece of gear that you've had for 6 months and haven't touched it in that time frame, then you should probably sell it. 6 months tends to be a decent amount of time to know if a piece of gear has lost its use case inside of your kit. And at that point, that's when you have to realize that you have too much camera gear and it's time to sell it for better pieces of gear or to simply pocket the money. It's always better to sell that piece of gear than keeping it and allowing it to collect dust. So, how do you actually sell your camera gear? First things first, find the pieces of gear that you don't want. Then, take some high quality images of them in JPEG. You won't really need to edit the photos, it's not that deep. Make sure to capture a bunch of different angles to showcase the condition that they're in. I usually take around 8 to 10 photos depending on how many items it comes with, or if there's any nicks on the piece of gear, then I'll make sure to show it the best I can so the prospect can get a gist of what the condition is. From there, I'll find out how much the piece of gear is selling for in similar conditions on eBay and set the price around there. And also post it to eBay, OfferUp, and Facebook Marketplace. I like posting it to multiple sites to ensure that it's shown in as many places as possible. This gives me the best chance of moving it as soon as possible, because the more places you have it listed in, the more people that's able to see it. But also, it gives you more leverage because you have more offers coming in, allowing you to not have to take those bad offers. And of course, once the item is sold, I go ahead and ship it out or meet with the person I want to sell it to. It's a very simple process, but does take some time, so make sure to be patient and never take a bad offer. Remember, no deal is better than a bad deal, but now you can use this money to experience more of the world. But speaking of experiencing more of the world, having less camera gear puts more of a focus on what actually matters in photography, and that's going out and shooting. Instead of being obsessed with the latest and greatest camera gear, become obsessed with improving your skill set and learning to become a better photographer. It costs nothing to take better images and learn new techniques, which will give you the tools to have more creative control over your photography. It's so easy to become so focused on the new camera gear. I mean, seeing what these camera companies are coming out with in terms of the latest technology is really exciting. You end up watching all the reviews on a new piece of gear and get so excited about it that you simply end up buying it because you want to feel that sense of joy and fulfillment that a new piece of gear will bring you. Then end up receiving that new toy and end up being happy for a little bit, then realizing that yet again, it's just another piece of camera gear. There's nothing groundbreaking or wildly exciting. It's simply another tool to help you take an image, the same as what your other piece of gear has done before, and the excitement wears off after a while. So you get back online and check out what the next greatest piece of gear is to fill that void yet again. It's a cycle that I would especially fall into, but it doesn't need to be like that. Because what would actually bring that deeper sense of fulfillment that we're looking for is to go out and experience the world. Traveling to a new place and experiencing a new landscape that you've never been to before and come back with images that will last you a lifetime is what makes photography fun. It's not about the new camera gear or the obsession with getting a new toy. It's about capturing the photo that will bring you a lifetime of memories. That is what makes life worth living. Camera gear is simply a means to the greater ends of experiencing the world, and if the camera gear is distracting you from taking more photos, then it's best to shift that focus to being more minimalistic and shoot more often. That is what will help you become a better photographer, and something that I really focus on more lately. So go out and experience more of the world and capture that portfolio-worthy photo. But what do you think about the concept that I'm talking about in this video? Do you think it's a little bit far-fetched or something that you resonate with? Let me know down in the comment section down below. Anyways guys, thank you so much for experiencing the world with me today. And if you want to check out some other videos that I have, see you right here.